What's going on? Happy Sunday. Good to be with you all today. Hopefully, you're having an incredible weekend. Had some time to hang out with your family, maybe even make it to church this morning. I hope you made it to church or did whatever things light your soul up. It's important to honor that, to be a part of whatever it is that does that for you. Some of you guys get lit up by reading scripture, others by acts of service, others by attending their most favorite religious institution or church. All of it is wonderful and beautiful. And I encourage you to do that if you don't have a place like that in your life. It's always a fun thing to find one or even make one. Today, we are going to talk about quantum entanglement and faithful surrender. Quantum entanglement and faithful surrender. And this is going to be a little bit of science, a lot of science. In addition to that, we'll be bringing in Western and Eastern mystical philosophy. That will be brought from Christian mysticism, Islamic mysticism, Jewish mysticism, Buddhist mysticism, Hindu mysticism, all of the great mystical traditions, all of which have so many overlaps, which allow us to really distill it down to understanding that all of it is the same at so many levels fundamentally. But we're going to leave dogma and those beliefs to the side right now so that we can get into the science of it. I think once we find the commonality that we all share within science, it's so much easier for us to then see the commonalities that we have with each other on religious backgrounds. And I think that's where we'll be able to pull that thread. And as we all pull our respective threads, what ends up happening is we find ourselves all together in the middle. So first, let's kind of talk a little bit about what quantum entanglement is. Quantum entanglement was defined or described by Albert Einstein as spooky action at a distance. Spooky action at a distance. Now, according to classical physics, quantum entanglement doesn't exist. And when we talk about classical physics, we talk about the Newtonian model where everything is causal, cause and effect. There can be no things that have effects that are not measurable with the instruments of modern science. However, on the quantum world and in quantum science, quantum physics, we find that there is major limits to classical physics and how it operates. And it leaves so much open for us to have no answers. For instance, if we look at the double slit experiment, this is where scientists took photons and blasted photons between, let's just call it a sheet of paper that had two slits in it. Now, because all physical matter, meaning my phone, this mug, the candle, my computer, all physical matter has both wave and particle characteristics. This has also been proven by classical physics as well as quantum physics. All matter has both wave and particle characteristics, meaning that it can be either particle or wave. And because if one thing can be two things, like if we have a coin, the two sides of a coin, if we flip a coin, 50% of the time we flip that coin, it'll come down heads. 50% of the time it will be tails. That just is statistically true. So if we know that all matter can be one of two things, particle or wave, just as we would flip a coin, we should be both particle and wave. And if you zoom in on a quantum level, we are all blinking on and off, on and off, on and off. And that is the nature of our actual reality. We are all blinking on and off, on and off, on and off. Well, what implications does this have for what we can accomplish or create in our lives? Well, I want to kind of take this to something a little simple, right? Let's think about a plate of spaghetti. I love spaghetti, so that's going to be the food that we're going to use as an example. A plate of spaghetti. If we take the ingredients that make the spaghetti up, right? We've got flour, which if we distill flour was wheat, and then that wheat was ground up. So let's take the wheat and let's distill that back some more as well. The wheat was once a seed, which was then planted in soil. Water was applied, sunlight was applied, and the wheat grew, right? So we understand that the flour that makes up the spaghetti has that component in it. And within that component of that seed that created the wheat, we have sun, we have water, we have fertilizer, we have all of those ingredients, right? And those ingredients make up the wheat that makes up a part of the spaghetti. Cool. We can all agree to that. In addition to that wheat, we add water. That water, of course, came from the water that all exists on this planet, and at some level was oceanic. And so we can understand and assume that at some level, at some point in the history of the water that is coming to make that spaghetti, that water was oceanic, right? And that water at one point, because they have proven this as well, was on Jupiter, right? So that water was at one point on the planet Jupiter through the creation and formation of our solar system and our planets. That water was hurled towards where we are. And now we have that piece of Jupiter in our spaghetti. Okay. I'm trying to take very complicated concepts here and distill them down so that we can understand the implications of how amazing this is and just how magical it really truly is. So we have water from Jupiter. We've got sunlight from the sun. We've got the seed. We've got the dirt. That's Earth, right? So we've got all of these different elements. We've got these different planets. We've got all of this happening together, all to bring together for us this plate of spaghetti. Okay, now we're only talking about the noodle at this point. Let's bring in the sauce, right? Now we've got tomatoes, we've got all these vegetables in the sauce, parsley, onion, mushrooms. You could have scallions, whatever it is that you have in there. Some of you have great recipes from your grandmothers, especially you Italians. So you got all of the ingredients and the things that make up those ingredients as a part of the sauce, right? Entangled with each other. In addition to that, we've got whatever meat product you've decided to put into your sauce. It doesn't need to be specifically beef. It could be turkey. It could be ground ham. It may be just tofu, whatever that is. It in and of itself will have its own things that it is made of. If we just assume it to be ground beef, let's think about that beef. That cow at one point was grazing on the pasture that it was living on. And so the elements that make up that grass make up that cow, and the sunlight that helped grow that grass and the water that helped grow that grass also helped make up that cow. The food that cow ate also helped make up that cow. All of those things help make up that cow. And so within that plate of spaghetti now, we've got all of these entangled particles, all of these entangled materials. Now, what I really want you to understand is that we may just think of this as a plate of spaghetti. But for that plate of spaghetti to exist in front of you at the time at which you're going to eat it, quantum entanglement at the deepest level fundamentally brought all of those ingredients together through the agents that operated on them to make that meal, right? Those particles, those things that make up that plate of spaghetti were all at one point one thing. So let's go back even farther, right? We are kind of looking at that plate of spaghetti from 10,000 feet when we're putting together all of the ingredients that make it. And we know that the molecules that make up that plate of spaghetti were at one point all one thing if we go back to the beginning of all things that were created in this universe, in our solar system, right? If we take a look at and we think about the Big Bang and how science describes it to be this concentrated piece, this concentrated pin drop size of explosive energy, in which all of the energetic stuffs that make up what we are were at one point all connected. And the next moment, no longer connected, right? No longer physically connected as they hurl themselves out towards the cosmos and the universe that make up the Milky Way galaxy, that make up the planet Jupiter, which ultimately at some point hurled water through because of the gravitational pull and all of the different elements and rocks and things that made up the collision that created the planet Earth, from the sun and the heat and all of the energy that is delivered from that big ball of fire that's in the sky that also nourishes us. And it all comes together again to serve you this delicious plate of spaghetti. Now, I use it as an example because there's something really interesting about the novelty of a plate of spaghetti, right? Because you don't need to specifically look at it, or most people don't, and think, look at the magic, look at the orchestra of incredible things that had to take place in order for this plate of spaghetti to exist in front of me. And so many of us just twirl our little fork and stick it in our mouth and have no concept of how good God is for the fact that we have that plate of spaghetti in front of us. And this is why I think it's such an incredible thing to bless our food and to give thanks prior to eating it, because of the miracle that has to take place in order for that to even exist in front of us, for it to be able to then nourish us and recycle itself in our body so that it comes out and does its own thing and gives us energy and vitality and allows us to then have this creative force within our brains that gives us the energy to go and make things, right? And so if we can take the entanglement and understand the entanglement at the level of the plate of spaghetti, well, let's think about your dreams. Let's think about the idea that what you want to create in this world, in this life, has in and of itself a life. It has a desire to manifest, to become a thing, right? It wants to exist. It wouldn't exist within your mind and it wouldn't exist within your heart and soul as a thing if it didn't want expression, if it didn't have a desire to be physically manifest in this world. And again, it begins at the level of the energy where all things are connected in that field of possibility, where it then creates within you a desire for it to find its expression in life. And I would go so far as to say is all of the ingredients of your dreams exist in the same manner that all of the ingredients that make up that plate of spaghetti exist. Now, when we think about entanglement, we understand, and what science has proven to us is the connectivity between these particles, between these atoms, between these molecules is so strong that it transcends both space and time, right? Both space and time collapse, and it is fully transcends that entirety in order for them to remain connected. So let me give you an example of what that connection would look like. Let's just take a sodium chloride, salt. If we take sodium chloride and we separate it, right? We take the sodium and we take the chloride and we make what was sodium chloride now sodium and chloride. And let's just say we take the sodium and we put it in Earth, okay? The sodium is on Earth. And let's take that chloride and let's go send that chloride to the far region of Jupiter. Okay, it's on one far side of Jupiter. Okay, now What quantum entanglement proves is that if we do something to the sodium on Earth, that the chloride molecule on the corner of Jupiter will be affected at the exact same moment. Now, if they were connected and affected over distance, we could then explain, no, there's a physical connection between the sodium and the chloride. Physically, we destroyed the sodium molecule, and then because light travels at whatever speed it travels at, right? When the message finally got to the chloride molecule on the corner of Jupiter, the chloride molecule blew itself up because we blew up the sodium molecule on Earth. And it took time. It took time to travel from Earth to Jupiter. And whatever that time was how long that distance is. And that's how we know that these things have a physical connection. Okay. But they're not physically connected, is what we find out. Because if we take that sodium molecule and we put it on Earth, and we take that chloride molecule and we send it all the way to the corner of Jupiter, and we destroy the sodium molecule on Earth, the chloride molecule destroys itself at the exact same time, which is what Einstein meant when he said spooky action at a distance, because he couldn't explain how it was that the chloride molecule would destroy itself at the exact same time that the sodium molecule was destroyed, because that would infer that they're connected across time and space. Across time and space. So then time and space in that field where the energetic connection occurs doesn't exist, right? So if time and space doesn't exist in that field, then are the ingredients of your dreams not in existence right here, right now, in you? I would go so far as to say they do. I would go so far as to say is the ingredients of everything that you could possibly be exists in you right now. And all of the factors, all of the different pieces that are required in order for you and your dreams, let's just call it the most delicious plate of spaghetti, to be manifest, exist, and are being cultivated right now in the present moment. So, if we know this to be real, and if we understand this to be true, then you are fundamentally entangled with what you will be, the act of becoming, at all moments, from past to the future into the present. It all exists right here, right now, which is why you have to really understand the power of the present moment, because in the present moment, this vast present moment, energetically, we have access to all of it, the entire thing. And because science has also proven that you and I are really just consciousness focused, consciousness focused, and they proved that in the double slit experiment, because once they shot that photon through those two slits, because we know statistically they should be either particle or wave. They are particle or wave until we measure them, until we look at it, until consciousness observes the experiment. It is 50-50 particle and 50-50 wave. And then the moment that consciousness observes it, the wave function collapses and the particle exists, and we become a party to physical matter's creation. Interesting. So then through your focused consciousness, through your focused attention, you become the agent that binds, brings, and coalesces the elements of your dreams into physical reality. Pretty incredible. So what does this mean? Right? What does this mean for us? Like how can we take this and apply this in life? Well, we have all, I mean, I think those of you who join me on this, topic that I love to dive into and learn about and use in my own life. I think you're here because you've woken up, or you're waking up, or you're hearing the alarm, and you're still maybe slumbering, but you hear the alarm and you know that there's things going on that are outside of the sleep state that a lot of us live in, or a lot of people live in. And I don't say that to infer that one is better than the other, right? Being sleepy or being asleep in this life, it doesn't mean that you're at a lower level or that you are less progressed. Maybe this lifetime for you is a sleepy time. I don't know. It's not for us to determine or to judge or to describe and to compare and do any of that. That's not the purpose of it. But I don't think you're here if you are not waking up at some level or have woken up at some level. And I think that's the reason why this resonates, and the reason why you listen, and the reason why it draws you week after week, month after month, is because there's an element of truth that you hear within it, and a part of your soul remembers that it is this, that it is connected to all things, that energetically, that it is all one thing. And we are all one thing, finding expression as individuated parts. And my belief is that we're all here playing the greatest game of hide and seek with ourselves. And we're really just understanding ourselves and getting to know ourselves at the level that is you for this amount of time, or for this experience, right? So if we take this back a moment and we understand we're playing a game, and all of us are playing some kind of game in our life. I play a game in my life. I play so many little games in my life, right? I love them. I play the game of success and failure. I play the game of love, no love. I play the game of achieve, no achieve. I play all these fun little games with myself, and they're fun. They're great, and I don't always win, right? I lose often, and it's also what I learn a part of my next win. So I call today's topic quantum entanglement and faithful surrender. So how do they come together? Well, if we understand that fundamentally we're all entangled on a quantum level, that you are entangled with your dreams on a quantum level, that your dreams and you are not separate, and at any point you could bring them to you in physical manifestation, right? Then what is it that stops it from happening? Why is it that so many of us spend hours staring in the mirror, reciting affirmations that just never come true, that just don't take place? Why is it? And why is it that if we can truly create from our thought, why don't we create some things, and some things are created? And I want to dive into that a little bit here so we can understand faithful surrender. Because we're always manifesting and creating at some level, whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not. Okay. So what is it in your life right now that exists? Just for a moment, I want you to take inventory of the love in your life, familial, romantic, friend, all the things. And I want you to look at the abundance or lack of abundance in your life. I want you to think about all of the aspects that are important to you, the level of belonging that you have within your peer groups, the concept of who you are and your place in life and your current circumstances. And I truly do think that as a byproduct of being a human, we're always going to have this sense of, is this it? Is that it? Is this all there is? Right? Because the moment that we outsource our agency to things, accomplishments, labels, of course, we're going to have that sense of, is this it? Because what is an extra $1,000, $100,000, $1,000,000? Of course, it would be nice, but fleeting nonetheless. We've seen so many examples of some of the richest, most impressive people in the world who commit suicide or get addicted to drugs and are in this massive despair, right? In so much pain, and they feel so alone. I mean, look at the tragedy of Michael Jackson's life, right? This is theoretically, or actually not even theoretically, in practice, the king of pop, right? One of the most successful pop artists of all time, adored by so many. And even Scandal couldn't keep away the adoration of millions and millions and millions of people. Yet this poor man couldn't even put himself to sleep at night. He required surgery level anesthesia to numb his consciousness into slumber. And that was the reality that this poor person lived in. But on the outside, we would see that this man had everything that we would call success, all the things that we think would make us happy. But there he is, miserable. So we know that things don't do it. We know labels don't do it. We know that success doesn't do it. It doesn't numb the desire agent in us, right? Yet we still strive and we still want these things. We still want to have a place. And I would say, even though Michael Jackson ended up the way Michael Jackson did, it would be better to be Michael Jackson than not. It would be better for Michael Jackson to have existed, for his music to have existed, for him to have expressed at the level that he expressed both beauty and tragedy at the same, because all things are both beautifully tragic. That was an amazing human outpicturing of what it is that's going on here. A beautiful tragedy at so many levels, right? And that is the reality of human, of what it is to be us. So then let's take this back to faithful surrender. How often is it that you look at the things that you're trying to accomplish in your life and you hold on to them as if they're never going to be yours, right? As if they're never going to be yours. And you grasp and you grasp and you grasp, and no matter how hard you grasp, it's like trying to clutch onto water, right? I can put my hand into a bucket of water and I can grasp, and what's going to happen? If I open my hand up, is there going to be a mitten full of water there? No. It finds a way to seep through everything and every crack that exists and will not be there when I open my hand. Because the harder I grasp it, the less it wants to be there. Well, the same thing is happening with your dreams and the things that you're trying to accomplish, the success that you want in your life. You're grasping and holding and crutching and just squeezing so tightly because of a lack of faith. Because the reality is that if it was truly faith that exists in behind that holding on to, or the action of trying to scoop, the hand would never have been clasped. The hand would have been open. And if we do the same thing when we put our hands into the bucket of water and we hold like this, the water can stay. And we can palm it, we can hold it, we can drink from it, we can do all the things. But the moment that we grasp it, it starts to disappear. So when we have that sense of openness and we receive in this way, the blessings of our life will be abundant, and the cup will overflow, and the cup being our hand will overflow, because the faith in us allows us not to do this. But the moment that we lose faith, the moment that we remember and forget that our creator is our collaborator, and it is within us, in the deepest recesses and the deepest molecules of our being, is our God, that it is all there and it knows us without any lies, because we think we're so fun, we think we're so damn smart, and that we can lie to ourselves, that we can lie to something that is closer to us than our heartbeat, that we fake faith. We fake it. So the dance. How do we dance the dance? How do we show up and have an understanding in the reality of all things being entangled, of the reality that our dreams are as tied to us as the sodium molecule is to the chloride molecule, right? That what we have in our hearts is stencil, or the pattern of what is supposed to come and manifest in this world. But because we grasp so tightly, it ends up slipping through our fingers. Well, the concept of effortless action, or what the Zen practitioners called Wu Wei, right? The motion of being able to do, being able to strive, not for the sake of completion, not for the sake of achievement, but for the sake of itself, to do out of enjoyment, out of the enjoyment of doing. And that is where we have the capacity to really dance with our future, to dance with our desires, to bring forth into our life the things that we want, the abundance that we want, the dreams that we want, the ability to be able to give to others, to bless others, to have all of this be real. We have to be in faith that it is real, that it will be ours, and that the things that aren't for us, even if we want them, won't be for us, and they will find their way outside of our experience. And we have to be able to allow those things to go without mourning the loss of something that was never ours in the first place. I see this happen so much with real estate investors, especially the new ones, who are sitting there holding on to what they think should be their first deal. It's the best example of it that I can give for the audience that watches this right now, because many of you have gone through this before. But think about it. The first deal, right? That first deal, you want it so damn bad. And some of it, sometimes you're holding on to this thing. It's not a deal. It's just an address, because there's no value here. There's no opportunity or potential. And you just find this thing, and then you bring it around to all the people who you think can label it a deal. And you say, look, call this a deal. And they're like, it's not a deal. And you're like, it has to be a deal. And then you go to the next guy and you're like, how do I make this a deal? And they're like, it's just an address. It's not a deal there. How could you? And then you go to the next, and you go to the next, and you go to the next. And you keep getting the same confirmation that there's nothing here. There's nothing here. This is just an address. But the offense that it brings, that it didn't work out for you in that time, was so egregious and so hard to digest, because you want it to be that. You need it to be that, because you're saying, I will only believe if it is on my terms, the way that I want it to be, regardless of the fact that if this is supposed to be a plate of spaghetti, I'm not even holding flour and water. No. I'm going to make my spaghetti out of cucumbers and I don't know, sand. Maybe that's what you have in your hand. Maybe you're walking around asking people to tell you, is this spaghetti? And it's not. And it's not. right? And I use the example because I think a lot of you can go back and remember that. What was it like when I was first told that what I did here didn't make sense? What I did here wasn't correct. And I'm supposed to do more. The requirement of me is greater effort, but in a way that is without that necessity for it to be a certain thing. Why can't you do the calls without it having to result in that house being the deal? Why can't you make the calls for the sake of making the calls? Why can't you make the calls for the sake of being helpful and maybe finding value or possibly creating an opportunity, but it not needing to be that? Why does it have to be the thing that you need it to be? And why are you putting so many limits on what your creator would have you be able to walk into as a dream life? So, effortless action. Trust and faith that you are being guided. And even the things that don't work out are working out because they move you, they detour you. They are the invisible walls of the maze that are needed in order to get you to the end. And you crash into the wall with such anger that it didn't end up being the exit to the maze. I bring it up for you to think about the last week that passed. What ways were you grasping onto the water? How did you hold on to it so hard and so firmly that it just slipped through your fingers? How are you mislabeling zucchini and sand as spaghetti? Now, there's some incredible resources that I have found that have helped me with the act of surrender, faithful surrender, knowing that all things are happening for the benefit of all, myself included, even when it's not going my way. What a beautiful thing, right? Because an omniscient, omnipresent, all loving creator would not just love you, he would love everything and all things and want the best for everything and all, even if sometimes it's not going to be the best for you in that moment. Wouldn't a true dad want the best for all of its children instead of just one? Right? And so, in knowing that, what ways did you have faithless grasping this week? And where could you interject more faithful surrender into your life? I've read 2 books that I think are really, really helpful in understanding the act of surrender. One of them is called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, a beautiful book that helps an understanding of what this effortless detachment could look like. What does effortless action even mean? And how do we apply it into our life? How can we be in such faith that all is well and everything is happening for the benefit of all, myself included, that even when things aren't going my way, they are. Even when things aren't going my way, they are. How can we live that at a greater level? Second book that I believe would be a great resource for you in defining and understanding the act of surrender is called The Magic of Surrender by Kurt Blackson. The Magic of Surrender by Kurt Blackson. Both books are incredible resources to help you tune in to that frequency of surrender and faith, knowing that all things are possible and everything is possible within you. And that in reality, you need nothing in order to attract everything. One more time. To attract everything, you need nothing. So for the week, an exercise. What are you grasping? What have you grasped? And what are you grasping onto right now that doesn't need to be choked? What is asking to be let go of in your life? What is asking to be let go of in your life? There's so much. Because as you let it go, you give room to receive more and to pick up other things, right? So, what are the things in your life right now that are asking to be let go of? Where are you settling? Where are you settling for less? At the end, I think what you'll find is the universe does not respond to desperation, it responds to frequency. You can't lie about what you're really feeling. You can't. And so if there's a sense of faithlessness, explore it. Why? Why is the faith, why is your faith in your creator's capacity to nourish you and to sustain you so small? And what would it require? What would need to be true in order for that faith to gain? And then seek that. And then seek that. I've been having a tremendous amount of fun with a group of people in a community that I've been putting together called the Energy of Money Mastermind. And for anybody here that has any desire to really dive into the world of energetics, quantum, the spiritual relationship between your finances and your life, I would highly recommend talking to somebody in the group. Maybe it resonates with you. Maybe this is work that you are being called to do. I don't think that you end up on these live streams. I don't think that you end up with these topics and these concepts as being interesting and important to you unless it is something that you are meant to explore. So with that, I am going to put a link in the chat here for any of you that have a desire to learn more about it. I would love to have my team talk with you. We've got some of the people that are in the Energy of Money Mastermind on the chat here today, and I would imagine they would all have nice things to say about it. I hope, but it's been a great opportunity for us to explore our relationship spiritually with the money in our life and how we can really nurture that to be everything that we want it to be. So I will put that link in the chat if you guys have a desire. No pressure. Again, this is not for everybody. It is for those specific ones who feel called. I would love to see you guys. We do these calls on Sunday evening. And it would be neat to have you there. There it is. And I will just put it up on. There we go. Yeah, amazing. I love you guys. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your week. And I want you to remember, you're God's kid. So act like it. Take care. See you next week.